Okay, so our last presentation of the day is a panel discussion on an HOA landscape rebate success story. Our moderator is Rene Ramirez. He began his career with the Coachella Valley Water District in 2000. He is currently a conservation program specialist here at CVWD, where he oversees the HOA and commercial rebates programs and assists with residential rebates, conservation reviews, non-functional turf assessments. So you may have already met Rene at some point. He's over there on your left.
Hello.
And our first panelist here is Ivan Ortiz, and he's sitting in the middle here. He's the principal landscape designer at Land Studio IRO, a landscape design firm based in La Quinta. The firm specializes in open spaces, HOA communities, as well as industrial, commercial, residential, and hotel projects. The design firm uses cutting-edge technology to craft customized landscape designs that are visually appealing, functional, and sustainable. And we also have joining us here, over here to the right, is Eugene McGuire. And he is from the Sanderling HOA and has worked with Ivan and Rene on their project, and we're going to talk about their HOA. Please welcome all three panelists.
Can you hear me? Oh, sorry, a little loud. Good afternoon, everyone. We're at the tail end of this H2O event, so appreciate you all showing up. And I just want to say also thank you to Eugene and Ivan for taking their time with a busy day to come speak with us today about the landscape projects that have been taking place at Sanderling HOA for couple of years already, I believe. So yeah, appreciate you guys' time and coming out here. This question is for Eugene. Can you talk a little bit about the history of the turf removal within the HOA and when it started? What was the original goal, and how has that changed throughout the project?
First, I'll give a little background because the context it has impact on. Can you hear here?
Move it down.
There. How's that? Okay. I'm going to give a little background because it has an impact on our experience. Sanderling is part of Sandpiper. You may or may not be familiar with Sandpiper, but it's a complex that was designed by William Kreisel. It was built out over 11 years, starting in 1958. When it was first built, it got a lot of awards. It was published a lot. Kreisel was a well-known architect, and it's a high visibility HOA for that reason. Sanderling there are 17 circles within Sandpiper, which are covered by 8 HOAs. Our HOA has 2 circles, and the layout is important because it made the decision very easy as to what turf to remove and what not. Each circle has 16 units in 8 buildings in a circle around a large green area with a pool in the center, a lot of lawn, and a lot of flowering plants. About half of the property of the HOA is in the central part. We call that inside the gates. And the other half is what we call outside the gates, which are between the buildings and the streets. The units all have extensive glass walls looking at the inside of the circle, and no windows at all looking outside of the circles. So it was a no-brainer that we wouldn't touch the area in the inside of the circle, and that's also the functional turf, because that's where, if kids are going to, grandchildren in our case, are going to play with frisbees or whatever, that's where it's going to be. Then half of the property is outside the circle, and there were some decent-sized areas of turf, but it basically was non-functional turf, and we thought that would be all considered non-functional turf. The process going from when the landscape conversion was first raised to completion, which we're completing now, was about 10 years. And about 5 of those years was getting the homeowners on board. There were basically 3 categories of homeowners. There were the homeowners that were all for sustainability and let's do it, we're on board right away. There were a group of homeowners, and some of them had a history of owning the units back to 1966 when they were built. And that group tended not to want any change. What we kept hearing from them is, we want the country club look. We don't care how much water it uses. That's what we want. Don't touch it. And then we had a group in between that looked at it from a dollars and cents perspective. And they were happy to go either way as long as their investment would be amortized in what they viewed was their future with the HOA. We eventually got just about everybody on board. The way we handled it was, first of all, we avoided the term desert landscape. We called it a modernization and rejuvenation project because desert landscape was a third rail for some people. The landscape went back to 1966, so a lot of it was very tired, and everybody knew that we had to re-landscape, that a lot of plants had died, a lot were struggling, a lot were inappropriate. So that gave us something to work with, to say that it wasn't just to save on water. It was something we had to spend a lot of this money regardless. The irrigation system was deteriorating. It had to be replaced regardless. And you can't look at what we're paying for water now because water rates are going to go up. That you just can't do a simple, it's going to take 5 years or 10 years in the savings of water bills to pay for it. We made the decision initially to do the project in 3 stages. And initially we did it because there was a maximum turf that you would get a rebate for in a year. By the time we actually got around to doing the project, that had changed and had ceased to be a problem. But it made a lot of sense to do it in 3 stages so that, first of all, the assessments would be less because they'd be spread over 3 years. And it gave us an opportunity to make adjustments as we went along. We made it very clear to the homeowners that they'd only approve 1 phase at a time. That if they didn't like the first phase, they'd have an opportunity to make future phases different or not to do it at all. That worked out well because for the first phase, I'll interject that we've been working on it for 10 years, 5 years to get the homeowners on board. That was followed by the 2 years of COVID lockdown. So it was 3 years ago we finally went out to get approval for the first phase. We weren't sure that we would get the homeowners' approval. And it was close. We got a majority of the homeowners voting for it, but it was close. When we went out the following year for the second phase, we got almost unanimous approval. As soon as the first phase was in and people saw it, they loved it. People who were completely opposed to removing the grass said, this looks fantastic. This looks better than the turf and the green bushes did. And for the last phase, which we got the approval for this year, we only had, of the 32 homeowners, only 2 voted against it. So there was nothing like seeing it happen. And we've also have phased it in a way that we've done the part of each phase that involves turf removal first. So when we get the rebate from that part, which you don't get until after you've completed it, then we do the part where there is no turf involved and use the rebate towards that part. Over the 3 phases, our homeowners have been assessed a total of $544,000 and will have received approximately $150,000 in rebate. So that's been a good help to the whole thing. The question which you're going to ask, as you had pointed it out as when you were concerned, was when the non-functional turf limitations were first mentioned. When we first had watering restrictions, we had no watering restrictions when we started the project and developed the 3 phases. We were originally intending to leave some grass, some turf in the large areas because we thought aesthetically that would be necessary, that if we went to no turf at all in large areas, it would look fairly bleak. But after we weren't allowed to water for one season, we concluded that we were going to take out all of the turf. And it was easy to get approval because what's the point in keeping grass that you can't water? And I think it turned out that it really looks better having no grass at all left in those areas. The large areas that we were concerned about really look good. People are very happy with them, with all the grass gone. That's some of my comments on our experience.
Yeah, good response. Thank you so much for sharing that. Sanderling HOA is, just so you guys have an idea, like you mentioned, you guys done 3 phases, and I ran some numbers, and they've probably converted close to about 60,000 square feet of turf removal, and over 25,000 of irrigation planter beds. That's converting their old inefficient, drip irrigation, hodgepodge irrigation planter beds, and they've done all, drip irrigation, point source irrigation system to all their planter beds, and I think installed already close to 8 smart controllers in the community. So they've done a tremendous job, and great job on the conversions. So I appreciate that, as for conservation efforts. Also, what recommendations do you have for others who are looking to tackle a project or do an NFT or turf conversion project?
Well,
what challenges
I think
should
some
they
of the
look
things
for?
we heard before, that the biggest challenge really is getting the homeowners on board. So you need to start early and allow time for getting the homeowners on board. And the second thing is phasing it, because first of all, it means less impact. It gives people a feeling that, well, if we don't like it, we can cut it off. But it also allows them to see something in place, and they don't really understand what it's going to look like until they see it, and then they are really surprised. The area there, we have one area that goes along a street along Edge Hill, and that was an area where we were going to leave some turf originally because there were fairly extensive areas between the houses and the street. And once it was in, that was in by last winter. And we got so much positive reaction, both from our homeowners and from the neighboring HOAs. So that's, just having a chance to see part of it will change people's minds.
Oh, thanks for sharing. As an HOA, what was your guys' criteria selecting, a designer for the project?
We had one designer, and then we got Ivan for the last 2 phases. The first designer, I was not involved in his selection, and that was pre-COVID. He was selected a while before. And he did a great job. No, nothing negative about the way that turned out. And his attraction for doing it, we've had a somewhat of a problem getting people to bid on it because they consider it a small project. And he only bid on it because of Sandpiper. He wanted to be involved in this high profile community. We had a challenge when we actually went out for the second phase of finding people. This was just post-COVID. The landscape architects were all so backlogged that a lot weren't available. We got recommendations, which is how we started the first time too, and we got a lot of recommendations for Ivan, and he was able to take it on and willing to take on a comparatively small project. I'll also mention something else. Another problem we had with getting the homeowners on board was we felt very strongly that we needed to have a landscape architect. A number of the homeowners were opposed to getting a landscape architect involved. They thought, why waste money on a landscape architect? You can just go to a landscaper and they'll design it and they'll do it for you. We felt very strongly that we wanted to have a landscape architect involved, both because we felt the landscape architect was going to be more skilled, but beyond that, we wanted to be able to go out for bids. And if we didn't have a landscape architect who could design it and put together a bid package, we couldn't go out for multiple bids, which we felt was something that we really were obligated to do.
Well, thanks for sharing that. It leads me to our next presenter is Ivan. Again, Ivan, can you speak a little bit on how you were first engaged on this project and how did you go about starting a project like this?
So essentially, the first, we get contacted by the HOAs, and we'll set up a site meeting, and we'll go review the project, take a look at the different conditions, kind of go over what the scope is, what they're trying to achieve, as well as taking a look at if we're going to have phasing of the project, kind of looking at all the different elements, and there's a little bit of back and forth. And then from there, we essentially formulate a proposal where it kind of breaks down all the different phases of what we're going to be preparing, from conceptual to working drawings, and how we can help them throughout the whole process. So from there, we essentially give them a proposal, and then kind of get brought into the project.
Perfect. Thank you. Next question is, how do you approach the design process when replacing non-functional turf with desert-friendly landscaping?
So what we've noticed, the budget is a big factor. So again, that gets incorporated into the budget, the budget and the phasing. From there, we'll look at what's allowed as far as the budget for the size of the project we can take on at that first phase. We also look at the different rebates available. So for this particular project, we use the turf removal rebate, we use the irrigation upgrade rebate, and the smart controller rebate as well. So that was able to allocate for that project or for the following phases. So it kind of helped us down the line for the next phase. From then, we kind of get all that structured. Then we start the preliminary design. So we'll prepare the plans, get everything put together. Those back and forth between us and the landscape committee. Then those plans get presented to the homeowners. And once that step gets approved, then we go over to our working drawings, which we prepare all our demolition, planting plans, irrigation plans, all the detail plans. From there, those get submitted to the agencies for the rebates, or for any city agencies as well. And then the project will commence, and we can help through. We help them kind of oversight of the construction as well. So from new planting, we help with the layouts, make sure everything gets installed per plan. Check the plants, make sure all the irrigation components are correct, and all of that. So
perfect. Well, thank you. Next question: what was your role in gathering the community support?
So for that, we typically prepare kind of our presentation plans, where we typically call the conceptual or preliminary plans. So those are plans that are all in color. They're more graphic. We'll have the color symbols. We'll have placements of all the plants. It'll have pictures, a plant palette with all the pictures. Give an easy reference, and as well as preparing conceptual renderings of what the landscape will look like in 2 to 3 years once it matures. This will get sent over to the landscape committee. Once we get that set, then that gets presented over to the homeowners and to try to get buy-off. From there, once we get essentially the buy-off of the homeowners, we'll take any concepts, any comments we receive from them, we'll incorporate into the plans and refine and move forward.
Awesome, appreciate that. Last question: what input did you receive from the HOA in your landscape design?
So typically, an important element was to work with architecture. As Gene mentioned, we want to make sure we kept a prominent design and of the important architecture. We want to make sure that we incorporated different layers as well in the ground plane, from the rockery to create interest with smaller rock accent cobble and larger boulders, as well as where we did have the larger open spaces. As mentioned, we want to create some topography, make sure there was some movement through the larger areas as well. Sorry. So there was some back and forth through the conceptual plans. When we make the initial plant selections, sometimes the HOA will have past experience with certain plants that they don't want. So we'll go through, we'll refine the plant palette and make other recommendations, and as well as spacing. So at that point, if we're over budget or if we need to make tweaks here and there, we might increase the spacing a little bit just to make sure that all our numbers and that all the rock and everything's coming in within budget.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure, was there a presentation or slide?
I have a few
you want
slides
to share
here
with us?
just to go over kind of the
Kind of
process.
the slides. You can share that, please.
Yeah. So here, essentially, we're going through a little bit when we mentioned the design process. First, we determine the landscape style, the maintenance levels as well, because that's very important. Typically we'll try to achieve a low maintenance, kind of drought tolerant landscape moving forward. But we want to identify any key areas, for functionality, if there's going to be community gathering areas or anything like that as well. Once we kind of get that initial idea set, then we'll move over to the site analysis, which will inventory typically, what trees will remain, what will come out, will make sense, what we think will survive during the transition. Take a look at the different characteristics as far as our exposure, the wind, and then once we gather all that information, we'll move over to the preliminary landscape plans. That will include the phasing plan, our presentation plans, color plans, and the renderings. Moving forward, once we get the initial buy-off from the community, then we'd go into the construction documents. These are the bid documents that are used by the contractors for executing the project. So these include the demolition plans, planting plans, irrigation plans, and then plans that would be used for water agency approval and city approval as well. So here you can kind of see a few photos that with the site inventory, you can kind of inventory the existing trees, what shrubbery we wanted to remove. You can see some of the foundation planting we ended up removing. We want to uncover some of the architecture, some of the nice stone that was in place. This was the preliminary plan we came up with for the area. So you can see here how we demonstrate the different rocks, materials in the ground plane, the plant material, images. The list consists of the names of the plants, sizing, all of that information at a preliminary level to give us an idea and be able to formulate a cost estimate to see where we fall in at this point in time.
I just want to mention one thing, and this is what we sent to the homeowners before they voted for final approval. We feel that we needed to have the landscape architect do a fair amount of work so we could get a realistic price to find out how much they had to be assessed, and so they'd have an idea of what they're voting for. But we tried to emphasize, and it never fully sinks in, that these are schematic plans, these are preliminary plans, that they will be changed in detail before we're done. Because we don't want, and it happens, people coming in say, I don't want that tree there, I want another tree there.
Excellent point.
Or we didn't get that tree that they showed in the plans. So you try to emphasize that their preliminary schematic plans and changes will be made.
And as well as trying to design the community as a whole and not by, almost every individual unit. So we want, especially this being a park, we want it to flow throughout and have some continuous design throughout and a concept that we want to maintain. Here's a conceptual rendering of the area, and we have at the end we'll have some before and after photos as well of the area so we can see. But by using trees, the ground covers, different rock material, we use different textures, different colors, and the different plants available for our climate. From there, once we get that approval, then we'd move into, this is more of a technical drawing. So this is, for example, the demolition plan. So this will show the elements that'll be, for the plants that'll be removed, that what'll remain. Typically, if there's trees, we try to keep trees that are healthy and that we know will survive. But in this case, there was a few that we ended up removing because they were just in rough shape to begin with, and they were not going to be able to survive that transition. And then we move on to the detailed plans like irrigation as well. So these are kind of plans that'll be part of that second set when we go out to bid and for the approvals as well. Here's some of the photos, so you can see going from left to right. The left was when it was original grass area. In the middle, you can see it was right after completion, and then on the right, you can kind of see it's about a year's growth. So you can start seeing the plants starting to fill in a little bit more. The angles are slightly off, but you can see some of the trees in the background start getting a little bit larger over the year's growth. And typically, probably another year or two, we're going to reach at least maturity for some of the shrubbery. The trees will take a little bit longer, but at least some of the shrubbery will be filled for the most part. Here's another area as well. You can see where we created the different rock to create that interest on the ground plane, and how the especially the green ground covers in the front, how those have been filled in a little bit more as the time's passed. And that would conclude the slideshow.
Well, this concludes our time up here, our panel. Anybody have any questions or? Yeah, go ahead.
I believe you said that the project cost about $544,000.
Actually, more. That's what the homeowners were assessed, but we're getting another $150,000 in rebate, so it's more. It's closer to $700,000. Yeah.
What amount of that covers the plan?
Excuse me.
What percent of the overall cost was the plan before you were actually doing the project?
Design portion. I don't have figures off the top.
No.
I think it was. I want to say probably close to 7 or 8% of that. I'll say. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How many square footage did you take out of grass?
Yeah, it's close to 60,000 square feet of turf removal, and that's also it's adding another 25,000 on irrigation upgrade. Those are just your old planter beds that were existing with old inefficient irrigation system that they converted while they were doing the turf conversion. They did it all as a whole.
And that figure also with some of the lighting elements also too, correct?
Yes, yeah. Another thing I'll mention about doing it in phasing is we learned as we went along. We changed some things because they didn't work out as well as we expected in the first phase. And we also, because the first phase was bid just when we came out of COVID and prices were going like mad, we didn't really, and it had been, the estimate had been based on pre-COVID, it was prepared before COVID. And we cut out some things that would have made sense to be sure we didn't go over budget. And one of those was replacing the underground wiring for the lights. So that we've done in phase 2 and 3, and we're going to back now and do it in phase 1 because we have high maintenance costs every year when the lights go out someplace and then they have to track, and a lot of labor put into getting them back on again. So the phasing, and we used DG the first time as a low cost solution, but we weren't happy with the DG's functionality. So we've gone up to larger stone now. And there's been a lot of benefit by being able to do it in stages.
How many homeowners were involved?
We have 32 homeowners.
You mentioned you got an irrigation upgrade rebate. Who did you get that from?
From Coachella Valley Water District. Yeah, we offer a 50 cents per square foot rebate to minimum you have to do is 1,000 square feet, and maximum allowable is 20,000 square feet, and that is per project, and you can submit multiple projects at once.
And is that rebate available now?
Yes, it is. That question, right?
So I get the total square footage and the cost equation. How many total square feet overall between all 3 phases actually got converted, including the turf to be taken out? How many square feet?
Yeah, that's the figure you gave us for the
Yeah,
total,
that's a
for
total,
the
yeah.
3
Close to
phases.
60,000.
And 25,000, so
Yes.
55,000. And then the total cost would have been approximately the 540 plus the 150, so total budget was about 690 then.
Yeah. But that includes, we did upgrading areas that didn't involve turf. So that's not just the 60,000 square feet.
So what's the cost per square foot if you exclude the other stuff? Just for
That I don't know.
Yeah,
We haven't calculated that.
That's the key number.
Yeah.
and a lot of it comes down to the the rock material selected. I mean, there is a range, but I mean, typically we've seen somewhere from you can go from $7 to $12 a square foot, but ultimately it just depends on the design, the plants used, the sizing of the plant material, and the type of rock as well. Because the rock, the price fluctuates quite a bit, and that's one of the most expensive parts in it. So
I would say the turf removal for when you put the 3 phases together was probably somewhat more than half of the total square footage. The phase we're doing now had more grass than we expected, but I would say probably between a half and a third. I mean, a half and 2/3 was turf removal, and the other between a third and a half was the non-turf landscaping.
Yeah, question.
What was the assessment per owner, and did you do it in stages, or did you do it all at once?
We did it in stages. They approved it stage by stage. The assessment for the first stage was $5,000 per homeowner, and for the second and third stages, it was $6,000 for each stage per homeowner. I also want to say that we tried to be generous with the first stage, but unfortunately COVID came and changed costs a lot. But our goal was to have the first stage look good, not to be sparse. So when people saw the first stage, they'd say, "This is great, let's go forward," rather than saying, "No, this looks terrible, we don't want to do it anymore."
That's a lot for some of the HOAs, it's a lot of assessment. We did our perception.
We don't have a reserve fund that would allow that kind of expenditure without an assessment.
It's in Palm Desert, correct?
It's Palm Desert.
Palm Desert.
South Palm Desert, Edge Hill, and El Paseo. Great community, great design.
Yeah, when it was built in 1958. Went off again. When it was built in 1958, there was nothing. If you see aerial views, it was just desert everywhere. So they could put it wherever they wanted, and they put it in an ideal location. And the longest side of the property is along El Paseo, from where El Paseo leaves 111 to where it hits Monterey and turns into what you think of as El Paseo.
I think we got more questions.
This assessment to your homeowners, you just sent them a bill for multi-thousands of dollars, or was it, or did you allow for a payment plan?
Yeah, they could either pay all up front in one payment, or they could pay in 3 payments over 3 months. And in our HOA, there was very little resistance to that. There were just a few people that had somewhat of a problem with that. I was concerned about, a very small number of homeowners who were less affluent than the others, and I asked our property manager, whether there was a way that we could give them a scholarship, that we could handle it, and they said no, we couldn't do that.
But in common, it's a really unique property, Sandpiper, because the architect is very well known. I've worked all over the valley. There's really nothing like it. On the other side of it, the landscape makes the homes. The homes are very classic style, very simple, and they've probably all gone up $200,000 or $300,000 each, depending on which community. There's different segments and size of homes, but the whole property over the last 5 years, and even through COVID, has just appreciated because there's nothing like it. So it's a classic case. There was a comment earlier in the presentations, the landscape makes the house. If you get a chance to go visit El Paseo and go through the community, because a lot of it's been converted. And there's a couple others that are just kind of holding out, but they're getting intimidated because honestly, their property values haven't gone up as much. So there's a real correlation between the landscape investment and between the property value. And honestly, they probably got a 3 to 4-1 on the investment they put in.
It's a unique development, and Chryso, who was a well-known architect, not a local architect, he was one of the very few architects who was both a licensed architect for buildings, architect, and a licensed landscape architect. So he did both the buildings and the landscape, and the landscape was considered very innovative at the time.
It really still is to this day. Yeah. There's not a property in the valley that comes close to matching Sandpiper's. It's very unique.
Yes.
See, and that's okay, and that's wonderful, and you've got a lot of rich people there, but this is the thing that's troubling me about this whole process, that we're digging up or we're having to meet the requirements, the state requirements. There are many HOAs or many communities where we're retired people and we're on pensions, and but yet we've got to do this. And so, we're going to be throwing $500,000 to abide by the state law. And so what do? We just create a whole new crop of homeless people. I'm very troubled by this, and that's great that you all live in a,
I don't. I wish I had. I won the lotto.
I should point out that the per household expense is probably significantly higher for us than for a lot of other HOAs, other than golf course HOAs, because we have a lot of common property per household.
So the communities like we work in, they'll have in the same space where they have 17 homes, whatever, they'll have 80 or 100. So those costs can really be spread out. And that's where if you develop it over a 4 or 5 year program, it can start be developed maybe more like this lady mentioned as part of the reserve fund versus an assessment. This is unique because there's a lot less homes per surface area.
We use very little of our reserves, and we did it without an assessment.
Yeah.
We did it with your rebates. And that's what we're looking to do in our next session.
Thank you so much to all the panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your story. Now, everybody's story is going to be different. Today was about giving you the tools to go back and make your own plans. They're not going to be the same as every community. I hope you enjoyed today's sessions. Big thank you to the vendors. Thank you for everyone that had stayed to the very end. We really appreciate it. We will have everything available for you on our website. We'll send you the link on how to access that. Thank you again. And I think Scott wants to say something.
Great, thank you. Michael, right? Okay, so I just wanted to say, as you pointed out, Michael too, okay. So, you phase this over time. And, we're the water agency for most of your HOA. I know some of it is in DWA that would be enforcing the non-functional turf ban, but we're going to be relying on you to make a determination on what is functional versus non-functional. So we're not going to be out there with a heavy hand. We're going to be relying on you to make that determination. And, certainly our board of directors perspective, and I said it earlier during my opening remarks, we certainly don't want to impact the housing affordability in the Coachella Valley. And so just, be assured by that.
Yeah.
Landscape as being ugly, and I don't like that word, but I have seen a lot of ugly landscape, and I think what happens is in 2029, if we're being pushed and we don't have the funds, then it's almost like we're being pushed to do something and put an ugly landscape rather than have it look beautiful or stunning. And you know the difference when you look at beautiful landscape, it goes in deep to you, and you're at all of it. And I think we need to have that, but I think time frame, maybe we putting some of the lesser affluent companies a bit of it at a disadvantage because we feel the need to do so much so soon, and it's not really doable to have it be, so that's my concern too, is this time frame and wanting beautiful landscaping. We want it to be every bit as beautiful as the Sandpiper, maybe not with that, those dollars, but do you know what I'm saying? That's where we want to end up, because we also want our property values to retain their value.
Phases.
Well, and they cut me off.
There you go.
Yeah, I think that goes back to, kind of planning over the next few years, and
Means getting a designer too, which, I'm glad that I heard that today. I think that would be something to go back to my community with, the need
Yeah.
to actually invest in a designer.
And nobody wants this valley to be ugly. Nobody wants to see, rock parkways, and we want this to be a beautiful area. Everybody does. So I think who just said it, that they did it, their landscaping with no, you said it, with no assessments and no.
And with our first one, with our disagreeers, you just say, go over there, go look at it. If you haven't looked at it, go look at it.
Yeah.
When they come back, fine.
How many square feet did you do?
I'm not sure for the second landscape committee, the first one's quit.
And structure any conversions in a way that you take full advantage of our rebates. That's why they're there. Okay.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day.